The topic of this podcast is about how do you kindle the intrapreneurial spirit in women at certain levels, in an organization, and how that helps them essentially kind of build build a culture where not just they are thriving, but even their teams are growing and they're looking at risk, innovation in a very different way, in a very positively way, because that's the only way to grow the ladder inside organizations. So if I can come to you, Sanjukta, and if you would like to share what have been some of your thoughts around kindling this entrepreneurial spirit. If you look at women in outside of work, women are known to be, I mean, we are mothers. We are the ones who could risk everything under the sun for anyone who's close to us. And we are known to take these kinds of bets. In fact, in rural India or rural parts of the world, if there is one stakeholders that has been betted on by financial institutions, by organizations, by NGOs, is the women. Because they're very responsible, they have that appetite, to risk and leap ahead. So, what do you think are the critical elements of building this entrepreneurial spirit, not just in those circles, but even at work? And what do you think, women are held back to be able to build that, when they are at work?
What you just said about driving women to have more career ambition, I would start there. I think women should stop feeling guilty or shy away from having the ambition and the passion for work, right? We always get bogged down with, personal guilt. And every time I have a session with women in organizations or in other forums, the question is always about how do you balance work and life, not about how do you grow in your career or how do you lead in an organization. And I'm glad Jombe is doing, what you're doing in terms of driving that. I think, apart from the usual suspects like focusing on big picture, having a business, having business acumen, critical thinking, I think a couple of traits I would really want to talk about is extreme resilience, right? And I think women have it inherently because they face a lot of priorities in their life, setbacks in their life, and they still, go through it, encounter them, and move on. Even as an entrepreneur or as you're working in the organization, I think you will encounter unforeseen challenges and significant resistance in some areas. How do you then navigate through that, continuing to keep the optimism intact? The second one I would say is extreme empathy coupled with active listening. I think, again, inherently, the nurturing traits of women tend to, be strong in this area. So I would strengthen that, because bringing in empathy, actively listening and understanding the issues help you translate them into solutions. And these are the strengths the women, all women should nurture and leverage.
Yeah.
And finally, I think just creative disruption. I think you fail fast. You don't have to be a perfectionist. Fail fast, demonstrate agility, get back, have a risk appetite to move on, and demonstrate the next best outcome for whatever work you're doing.
Very well put, I think. Thank you, Sanjukta, for kickstarting this podcast. I think you pinpointed a couple of things very beautifully because business acumen, big picture thinking, of course, exists there. But I think at a certain level, especially having the appetite to do creative disruption, and which includes, because creativity is always a little more open-ended than structured, but that's where most of the innovation happens. So you could see failures, but you'll always have something that any failure could also lead to what's that next iteration that needs to happen, eventually leading to a true innovation. So thank you for adding that. May I come to you, Vaibhav? What are your thoughts on how, what kind of traits women should leverage upon? What have been your observations of women who are able to display this entrepreneurial spirit?
I started my career a couple of years back, 2 decades back, and I see a lot of women participation all across. It's not that we are talking today, but I see at various levels and various things. Even at a rural level, also I was part of many social initiatives during my MBA's time and the early career time. Overall, if we put together, the crystallized thing, my own learning is, I think they are part of the dream of many other their friends, their families, and whatnot and all. But they also need to have a dream for themselves. And I think if I look at this thing to be, be an entrepreneur and all. I think there are three key things which I think, they need to, focus on. One is a large picture, because, this large picture is something which is very important. As you rightly said, we go to the work, we do, the routine job, go back to the work and all and everything, but we can't able to, if, connect with the larger picture, she may not be able to, create an impact. And there are lot of inflection points throughout, this, the picture. They need to identify an opportunity to, influence those pictures. And at the end of the day, the focus is also very important. So I think, understanding the large picture where they can make an impact, and keep focusing on, the end goal. As Sanjukta has rightly said, many ups and downs will come during, the journey. But if you have focus, continuous focus, personal side, professional side and all, I think, they could able to deliver excellent on, the entrepreneurial, the side.
I think that some of the common themes
Yeah.
that are coming out both from, from a counterparts versus self is, I think, being able to have that resilience, because no journey is going to be smooth. And especially if you have decided to, dream big, there are going to be hurdles to it.
Yeah.
But definitely underlining the fact that you
Mm.
should have personal big dreams, personal ambition without any guilt, and then taking steps with as much resilience and optimism, like you've pinpointed, Sanjukta, is very critical. I'm going to come back to you, Sanjukta, and getting into a little bit about, your life, into your career. If you can run us through maybe, over the last few years, I'm sure there have been, points where you ran into a time where you had to bring out that entrepreneurial spirit, where that led you to create new things, to innovate. And create new things doesn't necessarily mean you have to, start a company, or you launch something new product. We see creative thinking and innovation happening on some of the most common things that are happening in the office, in organization, how we operate, how we process. So if you had to go back to some of those critical times in your career that led you to display that entrepreneurial spirit, if you could talk about that phase, that would be great.
I hope I'm displaying that even now as I go through my career. But I have been privileged enough in my career to, take on a few roles that either didn't exist or were ill-defined. And I think the things that worked for me were, how do I find opportunity in the ambiguity? How do I create what I'm calling the mind network, which is pick multiple brains to understand the challenge, what needs to be solved for, actively listening, and then really go deep into the situations to come out and create the bigger picture. So, I mean, throughout my career, the multiple roles I've done, the programs, what we've defined and executed have always been focused on business impact and enhancing employee experience, including, programs in leadership development, where we've even partnered with you, Suruchi, in Bombay, and, culture integration, hiring strategy, right leadership, etc. But, specifically as an example, in one of my previous organizations, I had taken up one of the lead roles in a business transformation project where the company was moving from a brick and mortar firm to an omni-channel firm. And it was not intuitive that HR should lead that project. It required very deep understanding of the business, the supply chain, the manufacturing processes, etc. But it also had huge people and cultural implications, which had to be driven through change management. And one really needed to fall back on navigating, effectively through this ambiguity, extreme resistance at various levels in the organization. And there were times when even I like to think of myself as a very optimistic and a very positive person. Even at times, it really bogged me down with just overwhelming resistance. But finally, the ultimate goal is, keep your focus on the light at the end of the tunnel. What are you trying to achieve as a big picture? And having passion for that to enable the transformation, which, by the way, culminated really successfully, and it's worked really well.
I think being able to take on, like you mentioned, non-existent or ill-defined roles, and then there are only two ways about going about it. One is to crib about it and sit down and not do much about it, because anyway, nothing's quite defined.
Yeah.
And the other way, I think, is how you have approached is to look at it as a very blank canvas and find out opportunities and ways to make the first strides on some of the greener aspects. So thank you for adding, that person Vaibhav, in your personal journey or some of the other journeys that you have seen closely, what have been some of your phases, where it really, ended up taking that central role of being the creative thinker, being the one to take the risk, being, in the position to be pushed to think of something very differently, which requires an entrepreneur's mindset or an entrepreneurial spirit.
Many such things throughout, the life, but wanted to give a recent example. And I see life as a laboratory. I am a chemist basically by qualification. So I see life as a laboratory, and the litmus test of entrepreneurship is, the journey. What do you do during, the journey of 0 to 1? As Sanjukta has rightly said, I think, there are some ill-defined rules or a lot of ambiguity and all and everything. I think, in that phase, what really a person does, that defines a true character of, the degree of entrepreneurship, or, the real metal of, the person all put together. And as I strongly believe in that, I think, people need to take, the plunge. Few years back in my previous company, we were kind of, asking to go for a digital transformation in my organization. And after a long fight, I think, we got an approval to launch, some HRIS system. And we have been given a target of, 90 days. And I personally took a target of, doing this in 70 days, having a first launch. And on 68th day, the product itself is 60%, 70% ready. The product was not ready. And it was 29th of the month. And I said that let's go ahead and launch it. So it was November 5th. I still remember 2018. I think, we launched a product. We had a lot of challenges. I completely agree. But I truly believe that I think, fortunately I had a great team and all and everything. Along with me, there is a management trainee to whom we hired. She was part of this digital HR transformation project. And when we talk about transformation, the 10,000 people on one side and you are 2-3 people on the other side.
Yeah.
And so many, things can go wrong. And you have to keep that 90 days target in front of you. And I was very inspired by that girl. It's okay, Vaibhav. I think, we can do this, we can do that and all and everything. And believe me, we were only 3 people. Myself, one veteran from, my company, same department, and this young girl.
Wonderful example, I think, Vaibhav. And some of the things that I'm taking away is how you have put an analogy, that your life is like a laboratory, and a lot of experimentation happens apart from some of the regular tests that need to survive in life. But I think that experimentation, also from your example, what's coming out, a couple of things for me, and feel free to add on to it. But the way I would paraphrase it, most of the entrepreneurial stints that we like to do as part of it being a large, even inside a part of a large organization, is being able to start small somewhere. Because like you said, to be able to taste success of 0 to 1 or even 0 to 0.5 can lead you to from 0.5 to 1. Second, I think there is a lot. I mean, the current reality of our workplaces is the multi-generational workforce. But if the like-minded and like-passionate multi-generational people can come together, there is a lot that can happen, versus considering this as one of the greatest challenges, like we are all claiming it to be. I think these were, my takeaways from how do you kind of nurture yourself to bring out that entrepreneurial spirit. Because if you have a team that is like-minded with that same passion, and especially if we can have multi-generational people, because young people bring fresh perspectives, experienced people bring wisdom, and if you are okay to get started, small somewhere and take things one step at a time, it's actually a far enriching and exciting journey. And like you said, it's tough to go back to the routine then, and get settled with monotony. So thank you very much. Lovely example, both of you. I'm going to switch gears here. Like I said, we have programs at junior, mid, and senior level. And Vaibhav, I would like you to take a view from the other side of the table. I'm sure you've worked with a lot of women as well. But if you both could think of, if there were a couple of tips that you would like to give to women, even at junior level, of how do they nurture this entrepreneurial spirit since the beginning, then to the women at the mid-career levels, because I think a lot of action does happen when you are in that middle sphere of an organization, even in your careers. And then how, when you are in that senior, league, how do you drive this entrepreneurial spirit within your organizations, within your teams? What would be, some of the tips that you think would work in order to build this very important mindset and trait in them?
I see this in a bit different way. So I'm a linear thinker. I'm also a contra thinker. This helps me, to understand things quite different. And what I learned over a period of the time is every person who is successful, right, or unsuccessful, or maybe to some extent successful. People build their own success formulas over a period of time. This happens very, very unconsciously, right? So like say, for example, I'm a junior guy, then I move to, I am an individual contributor, become a manager, and then general manager, and so on and so forth. So I know that from an individual contributor to a manager, I did something great. So I got promoted. Okay. I keep doing, the same thing again and again and again. So like say, for example, I may be a motivator, I may be a person who is taskmaster, and that become my success formula. I think, one of the important thing at a junior level, for a starting professionals, and this I learned, quite early from, my humble background, is I think, there are two type of people in the world. One is in spite of, and another is because of. So, because of rain, I reached late. Because of this, I couldn't able to do this and all and everything. And there's an in spite of rain, I reached time in spite of this. So I think, this one template, if you put together in early days and try doing, n number of things, and then build your success formula and keep testing. Yeah. So when I was an individual contributor, I know that, I have to deliver. But when I become a manager, I need to say, I also need to see that my people become competent so that they deliver. So one of the things which I started is, how do I solve the problem? Now this comes very unconsciously in me, right? And when I look at, some women reflections, I was also very fortunate to work under women leader. In fact, almost, out of 20 years of my career, almost half of my career under, the women leader. And I also learned a lot of things. I think, the way they juggle between multiple priorities, the way they manage, the crisis, exceptional, the learning. So I keep observing all those things and I keep learning what are their success formulas, how I can improve my success formulas and something like that. But you have to keep trying yourself. You have to keep learning yourself. And I think, in spite of spirit is something which is very, very critical for, the junior level, especially the junior level people, to build that formula.
This, frankly, this in spite of and because of is something that I'm going to take home tonight to my kids as well. Because often, people, especially in our circle and, friends, they all think that, we talk a little higher order to our kids, but I think that has helped them, bridge some of the things. That's our way of parenting. So this is a story that I'm going to take home. But any tips at the mid-career women professionals level, and if at all for the senior levels? And then I'll move to Sanjukta.
No, I think, the same thing. I have also seen many, my own colleagues, they stuck at, somewhere and then couldn't able to grow. Is, one thing that, I'm available. I again, going back to, your point. See, organization need talent, and these are all private organization. I think, broadly, they don't, at times comes, when you really need, someone to deliver some projects and all and everything. I think, they will choose the best fit for the role, right? And I think Sanjukta also got, few, the opportunities. So opportunities are always been there in organization. I think the most important aspect is, yes, I'm available and I can deliver something. So that initiative is something, which is missing at a senior level. I mean, I don't know what, there could be multiple reasons and all and everything, but I think, they need to recalibrate their, the speed, the vision. And again, go back to, they again become, need to become, a kind of, what they used to do when they were junior and all, and take an initiative and talk to the people. As one of your questions, you rightly said, I want more responsibility. Can I do that? I think, we are waiting for people to come and tell us and all and everything. That doesn't work, right? So initiative is something which is very important. I haven't seen much of the women doing this initiative, in spite of, we ask people to participate in Jomis program and all and everything, and very few come back and tell us that, I need, yeah. So in fact, Suruchi, we have assigned internal coaches, right? Allyship and all and everything, you must be there. So I am just, doing a quick check that how many, girls come back, they talk to men. Unfortunately, hardly 40-45% of the,
Yeah.
but anyway, I think that is also beginning. I know that not 100% will be there. I'm
True.
looking for that 2%, but people need to try to become that 2%, right? And that is what is missing.
Oh, very validly put, Vaibhav. I think that's a real stat out there. I think organizations are willing to support. There are
Yeah.
just not too many hands that are getting raised. So thank you, Vaibhav, for the wonderful, tips. Sanjukta, your take, what kind of tips would you like to give?
I think at junior level, I think so let me just go back to what you said earlier, Suruchi. Entrepreneurial spirit doesn't mean you make a huge program or something phenomenal. I think you start with a specific challenge or a small thing within your area of expertise, and kind of at some point in time it initiates into like a chain reaction of change across the organization. And thank fortunately I've seen many women in my career take on those kind of work. But at junior level, or when you're starting off your career, I think the one trait I would really want everyone to focus on is hunger for
Hmm.
knowledge, curiosity. Like you've got to not just wear horse blinkers and focus on what the job you got or the role you got, but really start talking to people, start reading up, start understanding, if you're part of a large organization, start understanding the organization as a whole, because that's how you will imbibe what you can and may do in the future.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think at the mid-level, I would just say this is the hardest phase for every woman, especially because they're typically also, having a family at that time. Their spouses will be at a career stage where there could be relocations, etc.
Yeah.
I would say co-opt as much support. That's how I have
Right.
been privileged and, been successful personally as well as professionally. Get as much support. We have kids, but how do you make sure that your partner or, other people in your family are equally supportive of, bringing them up? And then at work, get out of your comfort zone. I see too many women and some men just being very comfortable in the job they've been given, and they expect the organization to make magic happen for them in terms of their career, but just by doing that job for years and years over. I just feel like you've got to raise your hand to, Vaibhav's point earlier, raise your hand, ask for things, get out of your comfort zone and do something different.
Absolutely.
At the senior level, I would say being comfortable with change and ambiguity and passing that on to your organization and your team, be able to guide the organization and team towards again fearlessness and optimism.
Yeah.
I think what we don't do enough of is celebrating failures, right?
Hmm.
It's and people innovation will not foster if you do not celebrate failures and you find fault. And so be reward people who have tried something new or made that effort to try something new, even if it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And you will see that kind of grow into a revolution, saying, okay, I have a safe space to experiment and think about new things. My senior leaders will support me, and then it just creates a huge culture of innovation.
Well, thank you. I think wonderful. I think you pinpointed on some of the very, finer nuances, especially this hunger, curiosity part of it at the younger level. I think if you can continue to do that, you will be looking at, one of our advisors, she's a Bollywood movie producer. We were talking to her about one of our children, and she said, kindness is a very important trait for innovation, and the way she links it is, kind people often are very curious to understand the other person's problem statement. And if you're able to understand and have that curious mind, because kindness leads to that curiosity will eventually lead to an innovation or the problem to be solved. So I think having that alive definitely will continue to kind of, fuel your entrepreneurial spirit. And definitely, I think at the mid level, I think we are all aware how much a support system plays a role, how much a guilt free delegation of work. I think, and the times are changing, fathers around the world are far more involved than what our dads were, I think, in their children's lives. So there's no reason for us to not being able to have that mind space for us, our ambition. And definitely at the senior level, I think just being comfortable and be okay with ambiguity, but at the same time, creating clarity around that ambiguity for your team members is essential for them to not crumble. So thank you very much, or both of you, for bringing out such beautiful aspects. Just one last question. You've been in an organization, you've been in your careers for quite too long. Couple of things that you think, or one thing that organizations could do to nurture this entrepreneurial spirit, especially in women professionals, because we're seeing a little more hesitance in this gender. What would that be? That would be great. Vaibhav, your thoughts?
I think after COVID, many things started happening. One of the biggest, barrier actually is, the flexibility and all those things.
Yeah.
I believe, broadly across the sector, bearing manufacturing, the core manufacturing and all. I think if you look at in India, there's a huge change in terms of mindset, in terms of acceptability, management, even the traditional, the organizations. I've seen, in some pockets things are happening, right? There are million shades of gray, but I still feel that I think that has started. So, and obviously COVID and those things have accelerated everything to the large extent.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you. Sanjukta, your thoughts?
I agree with all that Vaibhav said. I would just add that I think we speak a lot to women about women. I think we need to speak a lot more to men about how to manage and lead women.
Yeah.
And I see that in my workplace. People come from different social contexts. Their upbringing is different. Not everyone is as comfortable creating a safe and inclusive environment for all kinds of people. And there is a genuine need, and we should continue to talk to our male and female leaders to how to create that safe environment to firstly even bring up issues which managers are struggling to manage, and then perpetuate that to their teams. I just feel that is one big thing I'm hoping to continue doing. The other thing is, I think women need a little bolster. Of course, I've seen women who have extreme lack of confidence, and even that bolster doesn't help. But for example, in our company, we have this, we are a hardcore engineering organization, and we have this patent process. And there is a process to it. So, to Vaibhav's earlier point about a structure, right? We usually have an innovation week where we encourage everyone to think about innovative stuff in their products and go through the patent process and apply for a patent. We see less than 1% women participating. And so what we did was we created an innovation week just for women. And we said only women participate, and we will handhold you through the process. And even early career women coming out fresh from campus have today filed patents. And I just feel like they need a little bolster, little confidence, little push, and now they have the confidence to do it on their own. They don't need the organization to push them anymore. So I feel like we have to do a little more of that.
Absolutely. I think because there have been no precedents, this is hopefully be setting it as a precedent for the women to come in the future in our workforces. So completely agree. There's a lot of actioning and a little more focus on the way women are led or managed, like you said, Sanjukta. But some of my key takeaways are, guilt-free personal ambition is critical, and there's no reason, to not think of it that way. I think creative disruption is very important from an entrepreneur's point of view. I think I'm going to, it's going to stick with me. Life is a laboratory, so feel free to experiment once in a while. It's critical. Starting small, seeing small success leads you to take bigger strides. Of course, focusing on the in spite of versus the because of. I think you also very beautifully pinpointed the celebration of failure. Sanjukta, please stay tuned. We have something interesting coming around that. We're launching another open program, and one of the key, the way we want to talk about that program is actually about, talking about failure. So it will come your way, because I think there's a lot more that gets learned when you talk about failure. Of course, people love to talk about their, success stories, but there are multiple failures that go on the way before that eventual success story happens. Even for just, people who are part of large organizations, but go through their own stories as well. So thank you both of you for joining us.